Today on Building the Open Metaverse.
We now educate every other app out there on the market how to build your app once with one UI system. Doesn't matter if you are going to be in VR, in mixed reality, in augmented reality. Doesn't matter if you're going to have two controllers, one controller and one tracked hand, or just hands. It's the same product.
Welcome to Building the Open Metaverse, where technology experts discuss how the community is building the open metaverse together. Hosted by Patrick Cozy and Mark Petit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Building the Open Metaverse Season 6, the podcast that showcases the community of artists, developers, researchers, executives, and entrepreneurs who are building the Internet of Tomorrow. My name is Mark Petit, and my co-host is Patrick Cozy. Patrick, how are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. I'm recording from our studio at the Cesium headquarters in Philadelphia. The other thing that's happening here right now is we're hosting the SIGGRAPH i3D conference. So we have some super smart folks from around the world here talking about, the latest advancements in interactivity and real time. Quite a moment to be hosting these folks in Philly. But for the show today, we're going to be talking about VR and how co-experience and immersion can help with design. And we have one of the pioneers of VR development with us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Inga Petryaevskaya, the visionary CEO and founder of ShapesXR, a pioneering VR collaboration platform. With a background deeply rooted in innovation and a passion for pushing the boundaries of technology, Inga has led ShapesXR to the forefront of the XR industry. And today, she joined us to share insights into her journey, the transformative power of ShapesXR, and its profound impact on collaborative design and immersive experience. So please welcome to the show, Inga. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Patrick. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today.
We'd like to start off the episode if you want to share a bit about yourself and your career journey.
So I'm a computer scientist. I'm a software engineer by education. And coming originally from Eastern Europe, it's like you have to have 1 degree or at least 2 degrees, to start doing anything. So that's very different from US entrepreneurs, like typical, portrait. So my first degree is software engineer, but second degree is in computer science, early days of machine learning. And this is how I started at Siemens quite many years ago in corporate technology. But that was an incredible experience for me back then because it was like fundamental research and applied research. And my job was actually to find a project that can benefit our clients and business units today. And it was something super early days in machine learning. And we were predicting, for example, flooding in the city of Amsterdam using machine learning algorithms. So that was back in 2005. And then I spent several years at Siemens corporate technology, incredible experience to understand how the new tech is going to change the world, but how can we apply it as soon as possible for some real world problems. And then I joined EMC, which is the East Coast company here in the US. And again, was super lucky to work at EMC when Pat Gelsinger was the CTO of the company. He used to be a CTO of Intel back then. Then he joined EMC and he was a CTO, and I was part of the office of the CTO, and also, searching for some incredible tech startup that could bring innovation inside the company. And EMC was very acquisitive, and that was so inspiring for me to meet technical. It was all deep tech. It was not financial investment. That was like, okay, what is the great next big thing that we can acquire and, keep building with the resources of a big company. And that was super interesting. And VMware, for example, that Pat became the CEO later on, was acquisition by EMC, probably even more known than EMC itself, and RSA and other companies. And while meeting all those entrepreneurs, I was really jealous that I have so many ideas. But again, my probably Eastern European culture vision was like education first, then you have to make your own money to spend your own money. Because how can you spend someone else's money? And get that stability first and be self-sufficient, and only then you can go on that journey, kind of. But I spent so much time with entrepreneurs, for example, in Israel and the UK and US, and it was completely different mindset of how you do projects and startups. And then Immersive got acquired by Dell, actually, was a big thing. And I was at GDC of 2015, I believe, when I tried the first Oculus and met one of the Oculus co-founders. And oh my gosh, so I was amazed. And the reason I was amazed because my entire career, as you already understood, I had to explain some very complicated ideas that was so hard to explain. You either build a software prototype and you have to fight for resources, development resources, design resources to build a prototype or MVP that then the company decides to fund or not to fund. Or you build a like just futuristic PowerPoint deck with some random images no one cares, like not realistic ones. And then in a headset, I realized that I'm actually inside 3D. And it's definitely going to democratize how we explain ideas, how we pitch ideas. And so initial thing was like, yeah, so this is the future. I really wanted to join some platform shift. I was probably too young when personal computing shift was happening. When mobile computing shift was happening, I was still building career and like, okay, that's not for me. Someone else is going to do that. When I joined AMC, like cloud computing was happening, like virtualization and all that things. That was pretty awesome. And then I realized, okay, this is the next big thing. We didn't call it like spatial internet or something, but it was clear that this is completely new interface and it's completely new way of people to interact with stuff. So, and finally I was ready, to quit that corporate world and kind of have, the feeling that I can do anything with that. Was super naive, it was so early in 2016 for VR. It was PC-based VR. And my passion was like storytelling, right? And the first company was Tvori. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but we've learned a lot through those early days of VR. And I'm very grateful for that experience. Yeah.
You're talking about TVORI?
Yeah.
I remember that. I mean, that was, or animation, keyframing in VR. That was interesting. You got it on Steam, if I remember well. You had a decent success at the time.
I think at that time we really had a great success, and Tvori was known as a product, and it was like initially like anyone can tell a story, but who is anyone? Probably we only had 5 million headsets back then. And I realized, okay, so probably not anyone can tell a story. Let's go and disrupt this entertainment animation industry. Because like this real-time animation was such a blast, when you just tried and people were like, wow. And I spent quite some time in LA meeting Disney, Framestore, Cartoon Network, all those Magnopus, all of them. And but I was also helping them to set up their devices, unpacked boxes with headsets. So it was really, really very early. But back then we were not fundraising and we succeeded. Like Cartoon Network built several great VR games that are still on Steam in Tvori. Or I do know that Magnopus was using our virtual cameras for Lion King production. So there were some incredible projects. But again, given that you were in a headset, but building for flat screen outcome, not really like what I was trying to do with Tvori, it was hard to really make that sense of urgency for them. It's just so much ahead of the market. But then I realized that we still have some great user engagement, but those people are not animators and they're not from entertainment industry. And those people were actually XR designers because they were missing anything that would be available to allow them to be immersed and do stuff. But Tvori was never built for that.
And then ShapesXR.
Right. So, and actually it was perfect timing. So I was keep struggling, trying to find the use cases for Tvori. And again, we had paid clients and that was all incredible. We were known and I built my ecosystem and network. And then I realized, okay, we have this cohort of users that we don't even consider to be our ICP or target audience. And I reached out to all of them, people who were spending daily hours in the product. And they're like, no, I'm not an animator. But and Tvori is kind of not really the good fit for me. But I'm trying to do UI UX for XR apps. And those people were people from Unity, from Meta, from Facebook back in the day, from Walmart and others. And they say but we don't have any ways to actually try things as designers without developers, try to get a feeling of how the app is going to look like in a headset. I interviewed about 50 of those most powerful users who were the most engaged, again, realizing those are designers. but probably it was too painful to just park Tvori, because it's still a beautiful product. It's, by the way, still on Steam, and it was heartbreaking. I was in love with that product, and but then pandemic hit it, and it was kind of good for us, because I realized that, okay, so now our own team building Tvori is so slow and so inefficient, and it was daily friction and frustration, because prior to that, I could send we brainstorm in something in like Miro or Figma, or then we have a call in Zoom, and then I try to send a Figma file and wait for Unity APK, and then I browse it on my own in a handset, wait for a day to get like another build if just I want to move things a little bit, or I can do that myself. It was such a broken process, and they're like, oh, I wish we have something just as a team to get together in VR and align on idea, and then build the user flow like real quick. And Quest joined the market. That was also, Tvori was not possible to force to Quest, with all those like real-time things that we had in that product. And I realized we need to build something for our own team. There is definitely something missing. I had big hopes for Unity because they were using actually Tvori for doing some EditXR and Mars project. But Unity is a development company, and they just probably don't know how to build super accessible products for non-developers. And it just was not like intuitive, accessible, or what I envisioned, collaboration in VR should be. And in 2021, we pushed the last update like January 9th to Tvori to make it super stable, so no one reach out to us with any bugs or anything. It's super stable. You use it at your own will, and that's it. And the first line of Shapes was written like January 11th, but I already had on all my napkins what this is going to be. It has to be collaborative, number one, and no limitation on like collaboration. Okay, if you're a team of 15 people, we have to be there. Real-time co-creation. So we can not just review things together, we can build things together. And then it has to be still storytelling. Like we have to show design in function, right? Probably keyframe animation is too much for designers. They don't want to waste time on that. And they want more like interactive prototypes, but it has to be no-code prototyping. More like, trigger-based prototyping. And it has to run on standalone headset, because, PC VR is powerful on its own way, and we love and appreciate how things look and how much we as developers can afford in terms of various shaders, materials, and like size of the models. But the speed, in the prototyping is the most important.
I really enjoy all of the principles behind ShapesXR, and clearly super revolutionary for collaborative design. I was wondering if you could maybe walk us through an example to help explain some of the key features for folks who maybe haven't used it yet.
When I talk about like why Shapes has to exist, I have to explain that when we talk about apps for wearables, which is now not just VR games or VR trainings, it's also mixed reality games and trainings, it's also AR apps. It's not just 3D, right? It's spatial 3D. And spatial 3D means that the most important things any days is to find the position of your UI, like real physical distance, and the scale and the ergonomics around it. So when you start in Shapes, you can meet at the team and define those major principles. Like what you are building, we have libraries of pre-made assets for you that you can use to very, very quickly mock up the idea. Like we can call it gray boxing, for example. You can import your own models, if you are exploring and you have a lot of assets, you can bring that in Shapes. The core functionality is storytelling. So we have storyboards or stages, if you wish. So you can show design as a flow. Or if you build game level design, you can go and progress from one game level to another. Like it's like very linear storyboard, like super easy. It's like when you can show and explain something in a matter of 5 minutes. And then when you get aligned, you can go deeper and say, okay, now I'm ready to build non-linear prototype, like really interactive. I want to click this button and then a box opens, or I want to click this or hover over this, button and the door of the car opens. And we have interactivity system for that. But again, to set those triggers is very straightforward. It's no code. It's just like trigger based, like super familiar for designers. And from day one, we knew that Shapes is not a standalone like tool as itself. It has to integrate to pipeline, to today's pipeline of game developers, apps developers. And that's why we have very powerful integrations, and we allow you to bring your own assets. We have integration with Figma, and we allow you to export that to any engine, Unreal, Unity, or 3D like Blender, and others. We have powerful plugin with Unity. So this is the cool thing. Like Shapes is rapid prototyping tool. You can really quickly visualize your ideas as a team, and it's powerful. By the way, I think what our clients appreciate the most and users about Shapes, you are building, let's say, a healthcare training, and you are super talented developers and designers, but there is still a lot of like subject domain expertise required to understand, like, okay, you have a surgeon, should the interface be, up or down, like when surgeon is doing his work, for example, right? So, or some other example of how they're holding some tools themselves, like physical tools, and still need to interact with the interface. So in Shapes, given that it's so easy to just go in and collaborate together, we see that our users are bringing a lot of non-designers, non-developers in Shapes to get their perspective. That could be, Olympic champion in box, if it's FitXR building their boxing experience, or it can be like shoulder surgeon, if it's another kind of users of ours building the next generation, VR training, like for shoulder surgery. Or it could be marketing people, if you're a big company like Logitech building real world venues, but you want marketing people to be involved. So this is like really cross-functional collaboration. And all you do that before you go to code and implement and spend money on, it's a lot about like iterating fast. You can try so many ideas before you go and build them.
I was looking at your usage of Shapes. It seems to be Shapes used a lot to create 3D or to create VR. But in the case of Logitech, what were they trying to create with Shapes?
We say that we have two major target markets. Our low-hanging fruits, and where we immediately like see, okay, we solve real problem, is XR market, as you said. All those apps building for the headset. I can name like what I'm allowed to name: FitXR, Trip, Nanum, and we just posted a great case study with Coaster Mania, a game built by just two people in Shape. Like they designed all game levels, their menu and interactions, everything in Shapes. And it was just so fast for them and just super successful example. And those XR team, they don't have a choice. If you want to iterate fast and build faster and ship it faster and make really authentic experiences that feel delightful in a headset, I mean, ideally you should immerse yourself as early as possible, not go to flat screen coding. But the second market that Logitech example falls into is real world design. Why? And there are more companies, and I can share more examples. Why it makes sense? Because our real world has a lot of similarity with our spatial world. I mean, our real world has no similarity with flat screen 3D, because flat screen 3D is 2D stuff, actually tied in a tiny screen of our monitor. But in VR, we also have like real human scale. If we can like build something which is 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers space, and we can walk in it and actually, literally like walk, and we can like touch things, and we can blend like real world with digital assets. So what Logitech was doing, they were designing or like building the full digital twin of the real world conference, meaning that they built actual venues and actual stages and booths for the company of the conference that happened in Berlin later on. Another example would be building showrooms for like fashion brands. They envisioned that in Shapes, and then they wanted to be the exactly same showroom, is it New York or London or anywhere in the world. So they get together and say like, okay, this is how the showroom should look like. And this is the actual like distance and scale. This is the space that has to be between this, mannequin to that object. So they actually redesign, I would say, like real world. But given that it's so easy for them to meet in the same environment, regardless where they are in the world, and there is no alternative to that unless you actually build a physical room, and then you like in physical world, there is no other way for you. And then you fly people to see it. Like you have one store in New York, and then you fly your marketing people from Brazil to see that at actual scale, at actual how it feels at globe. So this is, I think, is a huge second market for us when all those people have headsets and they realize that, okay, actually VR allows us to immerse in spaces that do not exist today, or build, airports that we first want to envision and like walk into that, but we don't want to start building it before that. And it's so hard to just do that on flat screen for many people. So again, it's like real world design.
So Inga, Shapes is clearly really helping folks move from this 2D design into this 3D spatial environment. I'm curious, could you share experiences for folks who may be new to XR and kind of how Shapes is helping them make that transition?
Yes, for sure. I mean, there is definitely friction for people who are, and that's why we are so much focusing on XR community, because for them, Shapes is like, wow, by default, because they don't think of controllers. They just come and see something intuitive, collaborative, they start building. When we talk about people who are not exposed to XRs today, but they've heard that VR can help them be much more productive or meet, there is a lot of friction, let's be honest, still. And you have to onboard them how to hold and use controllers. And that's why the future of Shapes is with controllers and without controllers. So this is what is coming soon. But I think that for them, 3D is very scary. People who today are not using 3D flat screen tools, and they either use pen and pencil or they use 2D design tools, Shapes is definitely the most probably relaxing environment for them, because we can be very intuitive. And we can be very intuitive, not just because like we are awesome UI UX designers ourselves, it's because the environment allows us to be very intuitive, because you can behave in VR like you do in real life. Again, I can grab a pencil in Shapes like I would grab it in real life, and I can start drawing like I would do in real life. Or if I want to delete something, I just throw it away. So it's basically, I think it's easier transition for them. So they are not using any 3D tools because they know it's super steep learning curve. It's not like for creatives. It requires just when you have your idea. And I think we have even more success with 2D designers jumping in XR than people who are comfortable with 3D tools. They don't want to stop using them. But those who are not even using like any, another example would be, let's say, another big company, a very big retail company. They were doing packaging, and packaging is a huge deal for them, like packaging of products and food. And you would imagine that probably they designed those packages in Blender. I don't know, no, it's actually physical mock-up. It's actually the paper, and then it took them 2 months to actually come up with a new package. So they were doing a lot of prototypes, physical prototypes. And then they were inviting, marketing vendor to come to their office to show them how the package is going to look like. And now those people who were only doing that in real world with paper, they do that in Shapes. They model it pretty intuitively. They bring those marketing suppliers and they explain them how things should go. It's like a huge speed up for them. So I think that the form factor of the device is still friction for people who just kind of never use that. There's still a lot of complaints, and it will take lots of time for them to probably to come to like default device, default input type, and replace their current backflow. But when they see that their competitors or someone succeeds with that and moves so much faster, and I don't know, design new collection every 1 month instead of every 1 year, probably others will like, okay, so this is the time for us to disrupt how we work today and just learn that and go through initial friction, which is like usually do not take that much time. But once you familiarize yourself, you can be so efficient and so productive. So that's usually, this is how we talk to companies that are very early days in their XR journey.
Collaboration is a core theme around VR. I mean, the ultimate promise of VR is co-presence. It definitely allows co-experiences. So, but I take it from your show that it's actually working, and your software Shapes, is playing a big role in bringing people together in VR. How do you see that move forward? What would it take to get even more adoption?
People who kind of manage to convince their leadership to come in VR usually get that wow and magic, and they have much faster green light for project. They win their budgets, and yes, and that's why now I see a lot of companies that use Shapes, as they call it, pre-sales tool. For example, there is a big consulting firm, and they want to pitch project idea to some big company in Japan. So previously, they would build that presentation in Shapes. They would make a lot of screenshots in Shapes, and then still they would send them a Google Doc, and then okay, there is some response, but not that. So what they do now, they send them and ship them headsets. They go through this initial friction, but they try to bring them in. You mentioned this co-presence. I think, doesn't matter how those avatars look, when you're in the same virtual world, but the fact that, sometimes the client can experience something at human scale, this is vital. Scale is so important that when you look at some kind of interview, you don't get it. You don't get value, you don't get magic unless you stay here and you see how gigantic it is, or this is the crucial thing, because then you feel like you experience it in real world. And there are a lot of things to have this feeling of co-presence, even for example, Apple Vision Pro, right? I'm looking at my Vision Pro right here. Initially, when they released that with their spatial persona, it was wow, I don't feel any co-presence at all. I tried various multiplayer games and apps, but then I only saw my zombie colleague in a flat screen, kind of not flat screen, still was a portal with some sort of dApps. And we were playing chess, and I'm okay, I don't feel like we are in the same room. I just see I feel as if we are playing chess with you, but still have Zoom enabled. And that was pretty disappointing for me at first. But with the latest update on the spatial personas, it feels so much better. And I'm sure it's not the destination, but at least they show their commitment that, yes, the feeling of co-presence, how this technology can kind of feel us co-located, even though we are miles apart and completely different continents, is very, very important for how we collaborate in VR.
I agree. I could not believe that they would ship the Vision Pro, not wait a few more weeks to get that feature. The two people sharing, working together on a spreadsheet or on a shared screen.
They probably still helped 20 startups to do to survive, because, the whole morale on XR market was so low in 2023. And probably if Apple keep waiting to release perfect product like they did before, some companies would disappear forever. I think the fact that Apple joined probably helped at least some, early stage companies. So that's why I appreciate that they kind of released something, even though so imperfect. And such a prototype, we can call it anyway, MVP dev kit. But thanks God that they did it and helped some startups, close their fundraise and win their clients, because there was still a lot of excitement. But I agree that initial personas were disappointing, and they were not representing co-presence at all. But they fixed it, which is great.
So you feel they're making an impact on the market?
During the first several months, for sure. Immediately we so many companies knocked to our door saying that, yes, we are prototyping for Apple Vision Pro. And because in Shapes, we knew that they're going to do that. And we added additional interactions for gaze and pinch prototyping so that you can prototype those type of interactions. And all of them, we are building the future of news, how people are going to interact with news on Apple Vision Pro. We are building the future of retail, how people are going to shop on Apple Vision Pro. And all of them, any industry you name. And I would say, yes, they were reaching out. And they starting to build those kind of experiments around like those type of initiatives. There was a lot of probably too much criticism coming about the headset later on that never helps, but probably kind of pretty valid criticism. So I think, yes, I mean, they definitely help, and they help Meta, first of all, because for so many years I was saying that my biggest risk is that Mark Zuckerberg goes surfing in the ocean and the shark eats him, and then my business is over. Now it's not just Zach, it's like other people involved, and it's so much kind of sustainable. So definitely they're helping. And I think, why would people expect that this first generation device would be perfect? I knew that this device is for us, for developers, for us to see like where we can go. And M2 chip, just so powerful to see like, oh, actually in VR in the future, I mean, when they solve this kind of weight issue, that it's so uncomfortable and that ergonomics is so bad. But I mean, we can see things so clearly, and we can have models with all those materials and textures. So that's very inspiring, and this new type of interfaces and input, I think it's just great that they introduce it being imperfect, just to give us the direction.
We think a lot about the consumer market when we think about the Vision Pro and the Quest 3. What about the professional, the enterprise market? And, with COVID, we've seen rapid changes in work environment, and we know that the hybrid remote work models and hybrid models, are not always very efficient. You see, those headsets being able to play a role in helping make remote work more efficient.
Remote work, when it's just meeting in VR, for me, it was always a questionable use case, to be very honest. I was super upset when I learned about the fact that Glue went bankrupt. And but it was probably super hard for them to compete when Backrooms is free. But I still don't like, just to meet in VR. It's a very niche use case, what I think, remotely. And again, it's lots of people are going back to the office, and it just, for some cases, again, it's definitely a powerful use case for sure, but it has to give something more. But all those like 3D models reviews and trainings and productivity is pretty emerging within enterprises.
So I'm curious, your perspective when you look really at, VR user experience. Do you think that where do you think AI is really going to transform that?
Yeah, so we've been talking about that for a long time. And I do believe that XR is the best user interface for AI, generative AI, whatever that is, like environment generation or like exploring some worlds. Like XR is an incredible way to work with that AI generated data. And for Shapes in particular, we are rapid prototyping. If you can build even faster, meaning like we can generate models on the fly, we can build like environment on the fly, we can co-ideate with AI. For example, I'm UX designer and I have an idea of how my user interface should look like. And then with a voice command, I talk to my AI assistant and I ask him like from that prompt to generate more ideas. And then we work together. It's very, very powerful. And for pre-production, given that in pre-production, we do not expect the models have final feel and look and, to have that kind of what we can get from actual game engines, we can use that already today. And for 3D models generation, skyboxes and stuff. My dream for design use case is that in design or creative world, we humans, we will be like director in the orchestra, right? So I still want to own the flow, and I still want to own the story and the narrative as a UX designer, for example. But I don't want to waste my time, searching for some models to explain my ideas or like generating environment to represent. Like today, I need to represent a forest. Tomorrow, like medical, like reception room, and the day after tomorrow, like some other environment, right? This comes all on the fly. But I direct that and I focus on the actual narrative and user journey as a designer. But this is more long-term. So, but thanks to AI, no one ever will be alone again. And also in Shapes, it's collaborative, but if you're a designer, you come along, you can have your brainstorming companion, you can have your ideation pilot and design. And something super easy is like initial as intern that is educated on our own data, like, and knows everything how to do things in Shapes, helps you to become power user in minutes. Like, oh, how do I snap that icon to the wall? And then you just see that and you repeat it, or it's doing for you. Again, I think that it's so great that AI happened when XR is in such a stage right now that we already have affordable consumer headsets like Quest 3, for example, right? Because people can do their Gaussian plot, scans, 3D model, and immediately bring that in a headset to actually walk into that and explore that at scale. I think these two technologies is a happy marriage because, again, like explore what AI gives us in XR is very powerful. And it's also changed the interfaces, like, having voice prompt instead of text prompt in VR, because no one is going to write any text for sure in VR ever. So I'm very excited, but I just don't think that for Shapes, like, okay, this is the main, it's just a feature.
So talking about the future, can you tell us what the future will be for Shapes? I know 2.0 is about to release. Sign up for the beta. I'm still waiting.
So to be very honest, what 2.0 gives us, so just to set expectations right, when we released Shapes initially, that was, let's say, a team of 4 people and kind of MVP. And at some point we realized that and then it was Quest 1 back in the days, right? And it was not even like mixed reality. So we had to really redo foundations and our own architecture and UI. So what we did, we now educate every other app out there on the market how to build your app once with one UI system and be kind of same UI. Doesn't matter if you are going to be in VR, in mixed reality, in augmented reality, or even in web browser. Doesn't matter if you're going to have 2 controllers, one controller and one tracked hand, or just hands. It's the same product. And it actually was not that easy to do, to redefine your design in such a way that your UI is super delightful, whatever input type you have, or whatever kind of device you are using. You always design for the most limited use case when your field of view is limited and when you don't have controllers. And, like lots of games don't even bother to port to Apple Vision Pro today because they say like, why should we? They don't have controllers. I mean, we are not going to like rebuild everything and stuff. So Shapes 2.0 is truly cross-platform product that is going to be available on various platforms. I'm not going to say more. And it will be same UI. You don't have to relearn anything. It's the same Shapes for whatever type of input or device you have. We can afford more, meaning that we now kind of target Quest 3, Apple Vision Pro and stuff. It means that we have a completely new library of assets, meaning it's much more looking, but it's also going to be, and probably the first time I mentioned that, procedural primitive, so that you can shape anything actually, right? And it's a lot of performance optimization, how space is load and how many people can do stuff and like models you can bring in. It's a lot of optimization. And it will be much more advanced prototyping, coming to different type of interactions that you can do in Shapes. But 2.0 is 2.0. It's just like the first step because I'm already more in 2.3. So the whole new UI is going to allow us to add new features and functionality on the fly. Because at some point we got stuck with our previous, we couldn't it was not scalable. So now we can move so much faster, but we had to do that kind of entire redesign to afford that. But long term, again, we are ready for any new device coming to the market, whatever type of, like stylus is going to be the future of him. Okay, then it's just there. Any new device you invent or like no new controllers, it doesn't matter. It should be on the fly. It's really about more high-end prototyping. And the fidelity of the prototype and interaction that you can build in Shapes. And so much more coming.
What kind of technology stack are you using? Are you building everything on your own? Or?
No, we are Unity-based, but we have a lot of proprietary things. For example, we have our own, networking system. So it's our own, a voice over IP and real-time synchronization. With Tvori, it actually was pretty great time when we were building like collaborative viewer, and we tried everything that was available as plugins or stuff. It was all our SDKs, even given from Meta or like Unity, whatever. It was keep failing for our needs. And our needs is like no latency, you just build real time. And I mean, you don't feel any latency. Like, doesn't matter. 15 people, you grab a cube, I change the color, you change material. Like, it's all absolutely, truly real time. And we spend a lot of time on that optimization and build our own. So we have a lot of property. By default, it's Unity-based app. Architecture-wise, we kind of revised our architecture now, and it's more like abstraction and modality, and it's super, super scalable. So, and our backend is AWS, but we also enterprise ready. You can imagine, like, enterprise ready means that everything encrypted, everything compliant, everything has to be enterprise ready from architecture standpoint, and we are super serious about that because our clients are Fortune 2000 companies, and with all security sign-offs, pen tests on our infrastructure and vulnerability scans and all those type of things.
Releasing it and being very responsive to user feedback is probably, in my experience, has always been the most rewarding.
Exactly. And I'm so grateful to our community. They keep saying like, don't let like, it's the future of design is probably too much into the future because it's actually design and collaboration and mixed reality. But they are so worried about that. They really so much want us to succeed, our users, that they are so supportive, so helpful. They share their feedback, and we run those user tests. We iterate like all the time. Like, we got the feedback from 3 user tests today. We go to Shapes, we try different options, we bring them in Shapes, another user test, and then we just rebuild things. So very, very high speed of iterations that we try to do. And probably what we release with 2.0, in 1 month, we can redefine our UI a little bit, but now it will not cost us anything. That was the major idea behind it. Now we can reshape things in Shapes without any issue.
Look, your passion shows through really well, and appreciate everything you're doing to support the XR community. We have a great audience here for the podcast. Is there any message you'd like to convey to the XR community and those interested in ShapesXR?
I mean, we succeed as Shapes is XR community succeeds because we are building Shapes for them. And that's why I hope that they just focus on solving real problems, because it's too early to create probably market for non-existing problems in XR because of the install base of the headsets, like let's say 30 million headsets. It should be like a real problem so that you have that sense of urgency for your users to go for it, because the market is pretty challenging just to do something extremely cool, but probably too early. What I was also, doing before. That's important. So resilience and patience, and XR community is very supportive. Reach out to me if you want to talk about, let's say, XR, or probably I can help. And it's very supportive. Like, I can shout out like Nania Reeves, the founder of Trip. I really admire this woman, super successful as, XR pioneer, one of the first investors in Oculus. And I remember I met her at some event probably 2 years ago, and they're like, I'm building this ShapesXR tool, and she being like ex-executive and the CEO of Trip meditation app, which is very successful. They really grow nicely. And I started to pitch her Shapes, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna try it. I'm like, okay, probably she will never try it, and then on Sunday, like 2 days later, she's like, oh, I spent 3 hours in Shapes. So I've been using Figma. Every designer should use Shapes. And it's unbelievable how hands-on some XR founders are, how much they love, the tech and appreciate, the need. And that's inspires me daily. When like founders of XR company, they're really obsessed with XR. You have to be obsessed with XR because otherwise this market is just disappointment.
Great. You see, Patrick, we have guests who do the shootout. We don't even have to ask anymore.
I know. When you're involved in these emerging technologies, I'd love that the communities are so supportive, right? So that's great.
And right now, it's so much safer for any new people who wants to start something in XR to join. We have so many headsets, and those are standalone headsets, affordable, accessible, and And this is fascinating industry, like, because when you talk to your clients, when you meet users, when you learn how people use this technology, it's a pity that we can't, talk about every use case, because all these big companies sometimes don't want to speak about like their competitive advantage. But you understand that it's literally not possible on flat screen. And if this is not the future, then I'm questioning what is going to be the future.
Well, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to you, Inga, for sharing your expertise and vision with us today. Feels like Shapes not just revolutionizing collaborative design, but it's also shaping the future of immersive technologies. So your insights have been invaluable. We're super grateful for your time. And we look forward to witnessing the continued success and innovation of Shapes under your guidance. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And a huge thank you, of course, to our ever-growing audience. You can find us on all the podcast platforms, on YouTube. And if you want to reach out to us, use our website, buildingtheopenmetaverse.org, or our LinkedIn page. Inga, thank you so much. Patrick, thank you so much. And we'll see you all for next episode of Building the Open Metaverse. Thank you.